So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Jason Hunter.
Thanks, Chris. I'm going to use the radio mic, and I'm going to be wandering around the hall just to wind up the cameraman, okay? He's smiling. No, I won't. I was touched, Stuart, by your story, because you were talking about the Second World War and your family being ripped out of their home and moved across Europe. That's what the EU is all about. It's about peace. Since the EU's been around, we haven't had wars on our continent. Well, the Balkans, but that's not part of the EU. But peace is the founding principle of the European Union. And we now, what they call jaw. We talk with each other, we work with each other, rather than war. And that, for me, is probably the most important thing that we get from the European Union. I'm not talking as a Remainer either today. I'm talking as a patriot. You know, I love this country. I love the union of the United Kingdom that we live in. You know, I love the European Union. I've lived and worked in a dozen different countries across this, exercising my right, my freedom to work anywhere I want to. My daughter was born in the Slovak Republic while I was exercising my right to live and work over there. I'm going to look at sort of three different pieces, I guess. First, how did we get to where we are with the referendum and with Brexit? Secondly, what does it mean? Where are we? You know, and then what does that mean? Where do we go from here? So how did we get here? Well, we had a referendum to sort out some Tory infighting so that they could settle this once and for all. And they've done that, right? So they called the referendum and they put the vote to the people because they're too cowardly to make the decision themselves that Brexit's a really bad idea, we should stay in the European Union. So they set up an official campaign group called Vote Leave, who lied. There was a competing campaign group called Leave EU. The leaders of the Leave EU campaign actually sat in a parliamentary select committee and gave evidence under oath that they lied to the people, misled them to get their votes on side. David Cameron said there'd be World War III the day after the referendum. George Osborne said the economy's going to crash if we all vote to leave and we're going to have an emergency budget, austerity will be terrible. The point is, everybody lied. Vote Leave overspent. They broke electoral law just to get a 2% vote swing. You know, it's a fraudulendum. Anybody who thinks any of that is okay, and we have to respect the result of that referendum, they don't believe in democracy. They just believe in Brexit. So that's how we got here. A pack of liars lying to the public, some people believing it, some people wanting to believe that the NHS was going to get £350 million a week. Other people being afraid that 70 million Turks were going to come and live next door to them. Other people were afraid that 29 million Romanians and Bulgarians were going to come and live in the basement. You know, the point is, it was a fraudulendum. It was not a referendum. So anyway, we got to respect the results because the ballots were counted and Vote Leave won. So here we are. Theresa May then decides that she's going to invoke Article 50. She writes this lovely letter to Brussels and says, guys, we're leaving. Don't actually know what it means yet, but we want to leave. And then we'll figure out sometime over the next couple of years what Brexit actually means. And as time goes on, we're learning what Brexit means. And it's pretty devastating. Because, I mean, I liken it to sort of being behind a brick wall. And you can't quite see over the top, and you sort of jump up a little bit, and you get a little bit of a glimpse of what's on the other side. And then you jump up again and have another look, and you see a little bit more of the picture on the other side. And that's Brexit over there. And Graham Hughes, the guy that's traveled to every single country on the planet without flying, he's crossed a lot of land borders. He knows his way around the world. Super cool guy. We've been chatting on social media, and he said, Jason, look, we talk all the time. He said, why don't we get a video camera, we'll sit in a pub, have a beer, because everyone listens to Dave down the pub. They don't listen to politicians. So let's do that. I said, yeah, all right, why not? So we did that, and we got together with another friend called Kieran. He's a van driver. He's crossed every single border inside the European Union, from Gibraltar to the Arctic Circle, and from Ukraine across the United Kingdom. He goes through Dover Port just in time, delivering vehicle parts, papers, artwork, every single day. He knows how easy it is to move around and trade within the single market. He also knows how much a little bit harder it is to get into Switzerland or Norway or the other EEA countries. So we started doing this. We did this video, we put it online, and it was quite well received, thanks to a lot of people watching it and a lot of great comments. And we said, well, we've got to do another one of these. And then the more we started fact-checking what the government and ministers were telling us, we thought, well, okay, well, let's go out to the WTO, because everyone's telling us right now that falling back onto WTO rules would be absolutely fine. I know it won't, but I thought, well, let's hear it from the horse's mouth. So we went over to Geneva, and we spent 2 days with some of the leading experts in international law and international trade that exist on the planet. So we were amazed by the level of access that we received. And they said, picture the European Union as a bait ball of fish swimming around really, really fast, and they're surrounded by all these sharks around them. That's the European Union. And what all these other countries are doing around the world is they're looking at that bait ball thinking, which one can I get, which one can I get? And they're waiting for a big, fat, juicy tuna fish to swim its way away by itself, and the sharks will just swoop in and grab them. They told us that the first piece of the UK economy that these sharks are going to come and take will be our agri-foods industry. That's agriculture. It's our dairy farmers, it's our chicken farmers, it's our crop farmers. And the reason they said that is because the UK government is saying the whole point of Brexit is so we can get cheaper bills. We could just lower all our tariffs to zero outside the EU. We don't have to have all the EU tariffs anymore on our imports. That means that other countries around the world, they'll be shipping in as much cheap food as they can, unregulated, because we've just lost all the protection from the European Union. So all this stuff will be coming into the United Kingdom. These other countries are doing that deliberately because they have a long-term view. I mean, when I was head of strategic market planning for the fifth largest steel company in the world, we looked on a 10 to 15-year strategic plan. And that's what other countries do too, not just companies, but countries. So they're looking to destroy our agri-food sector by flooding the market with cheap food so that we don't have an agri-food sector anymore. And that includes everybody from the dairy farmer who's producing the milk. The milk gets turned into cheese, gets turned into yogurts. You've got a plastics manufacturer making the little yogurt pots. You've got a silver foil guy putting the things on the top, cardboard wrapping, then it gets palleted, then it gets shipped from one country from the UK to exports. You know, if they kill that off in the UK, we have to import yogurts. And they're looking at 8 to 10 years down the line when we've got no sector left, so that then, where do we go if we don't buy it from them? They can just crank their prices up to whatever they want. Doesn't matter if we've got a zero tariff regime. And I thought, holy moly, that's pretty scary. And he said, but they can do it. He said, under every single computer model that we've run on Brexit, every single one of them. And bear in mind, this is quite a wealthy organization, probably one of the most wealthy organizations that exists. All of their modeling gives us 18 months to 2 years before our agri-food sector is dead. 18 months to 2 years. He said, when your government talk about losing 500,000 jobs, he said, forget it. He said, you're underestimating it by about 6 times. If you think that 3.5 million people work in the UK agri-food sector, that's 3.5 million households. What if they're only 50% right? What if they're only 20% right? That's a significant proportion of our UK agriculture sector. And that's just one piece. So I was talking with, what's the guy's name? Jonathan Isaby from Brexit Central on BBC Radio Kent. If you haven't heard it, it's a classic interview. Because he seems to think, and the Leavers seem to think, that they can control all of the tariffs for all of the products all over the world post-Brexit. And we can't. If we decide to trade under WTO rules, we can set our import tariffs into the United Kingdom, but we can't set other countries' import tariffs because all of the 163 members of the WTO, they've filed what's called a schedule with the WTO for goods, for agriculture, and for services. And what that is it says if we have a free trade agreement with somebody, we will negotiate away from that schedule of tariffs. If we don't have a free trade agreement with that other country, and we're buying something from them, we will have to apply a particular tariff for a particular product. And that will range from a 4% if you're buying a private aircraft, up to sort of 40, 50, 60, 70%, depending on what they've got, their industries in their own countries. So what does this mean in terms of Brexit? If we fall back onto WTO terms, it means all of our customers all over the world, when they used to pay £1 for that bottle of water, or that widget that we make in the UK, they used to pay £1, but when they now buy it post-Brexit, they have to apply that third country tariff. which makes that widget £1.25 or £1.35. How many widgets do we make in the UK that they couldn't go and buy from somebody else where they've already got a free trade agreement and they can still buy it for £1 somewhere else? Why would they buy that from the United Kingdom? How will that SME, that small business in the UK that's in that manufacturing process to make the widget, how will they survive when their customers in the UK, because they make the bottle cap, they don't make the water, they just make the cap. But the guy that's actually making the full bottle, he's not going to be buying caps because his customer's not buying his bottles. So it's not just do you export out of the UK today to a third country, anywhere inside or outside the EU, because bear in mind we can ship, not export, ship to 27 other countries inside the European Union. It's just as easy to ship from Trowbridge to Manchester as it is from Trowbridge to Madrid. You know, it's simple. Post-Brexit, in order to ship that same product to Madrid next time, you've got 9 pieces of paper as a minimum. I was talking with Guy Pratt, he's the bass player from Pink Floyd, and they're on tour at the moment around Europe. They said, with our truckload of all our gear and our speakers and our sound systems, he said, we just go straight through from one country to another, no problem. He said, but we've got one night in Switzerland that we're doing. He said, you would not believe the folders and folders of paperwork we have to do just to get our kit in and kit back out again. It's just, the complications are too numerous to mention. So when our customers around the world stop buying things from the UK, what have we got in manufacturing in the UK? If you talk to the Manufacturing Association of the UK, there's 2.6 million people work in UK manufacturing. 5.4 million small to medium-sized enterprises in the United Kingdom. What percentage of those are going to be able to survive post-Brexit when their customers not only have to pay a Brexit bonus, an extra amount just to buy from Brexit Britain? I mean, what do we make that's special? So we touched on agri-foods in Geneva when we were over there. We touched on industry and manufacturing. We talked about exports. And we said, yeah, but we're being told in London and the United Kingdom that we can get all these free trade deals with everybody all over the world. And they laughed. Yeah, I didn't. I think, oh, okay, this is not good. He laughed. He said the first trade deal you're likely to get will probably be with a country that's got a liberalized trade policy, somebody who's got a democratic, liberal-style government. And they said that'll probably be Canada, because they've just signed with the EU. Your regulations are all pretty close at the moment anyway. So you might get one with Canada. That'll be the quickest, easiest, fastest trade deal that you'll get. Maybe 2 years. 2 years for that one. Then you look at the European Union, and they said, well, you're not going to get a trade deal with anybody else, really, until you've got the deal done with the European Union, because take the American Chamber of Commerce. The reason the Americans invested £300 billion into the United Kingdom economy over the last 5 or 6 years is because they were using us as a gateway or a springboard to be able to manufacture something and then ship it into the EU to their other facilities to be finished. And we're very, very good at value-added products in the UK. The other countries around the world, they'll wait to see what our deal looks like with the EU. How easy is it going to be to export from the United Kingdom into the EU? And they're swimming around like sharks, waiting to find out what's going to happen. So they said 8 to 10 years with the EU, then you might have to start talking to the others. So we've got a bit of time to hire all those hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of trade negotiators that we need. The US Department of Commerce trade negotiators have got 1,200. Canada have got 800. Liam Fox hired 100. 100. When we were in Geneva, they said, look, Liam Fox, he could have been forgiven a couple of years ago when he was making those statements. Oh, it'll be the easiest trade deal in history. We can go out and sign up all these new trade deals 1 minute after midnight CET after Brexit. They said he could be forgiven for saying all that 2 years ago because he didn't know what he was talking about. This is their words, not mine. He didn't know what he was talking about. He was ill-informed, and he could be forgiven for that. So 2 years later, Liam Fox has been back and forth, met with the same people that we met with, and they've now told him that the political statements he's making are not true. He knows that he's lying to people now. He forgive him a couple of years ago. Today he knows. He's got a team of civil servants virtually living in Geneva, on a semi-permanent basis. And they said, these kids he called them, in and out of this building all the time, they're Average age is 30, 32. He said they're straight out of fast-track university, straight through the civil service. They've never negotiated deals in their lives. And the problem they've got is they don't even know the right questions to ask about trading under WTO rules. And these are the people that are running the Department of International Trade that are going to rescue our economy? No way. No way. So we're in a pretty bad pickle right now. Theresa May is now saying it's my deal, checkers, or no deal. We'll just walk away from the EU. What does that mean? At least if we had some kind of deal, like the withdrawal agreement, as Stuart touched on it earlier, there's two parts to the withdrawal agreement. The first part is the technical legal separation, and there's three pieces within that. One is the protection of citizens' rights of EU citizens in the UK and UK in the EU. Second is the financial settlement, which they've negotiated it down to £39 billion. And then the third piece is the border situation and making sure that there is never a border built permanently on the island of Ireland. And that is absolutely critical because the EU is all about peace, remember? You know, we have to make sure that we do not go backwards into those troubles. Graham and I are traveling out to Belfast on Tuesday morning next week, and we're going to do a session, an episode in Belfast, and then we're going to do one along the border. And our fixer, who's putting it all together over there, he said, you'll laugh at some of this, because at the moment, if you're outside the EU, your cows and your cattle, they can't cross back in and out of the 28 countries. He said, the problem you've got in Ireland is the border goes right down the middle of the cow shed. So the cows over that side of the room, those are EU cows. The cows on this side of the room post-Brexit will be UK cows. And they're not allowed to cross backwards and forwards. And if they all get mixed up, you've got to have veterinary checks on the whole kit and caboodle. You know, I was talking to the alliance of the leader of the Alliance Party in Ireland, Northern Ireland, and she was saying she went from a wedding from the church to the reception. She drove 30 minutes and she crossed the border 6 times on one road. Because it goes backwards and forwards like this, and the border goes straight down the middle. There's no turnings off or anything else. She's on one road. It's impossible to put any kind of sensible border over there. And Theresa May is saying, well, yeah, we don't want to do that. The EU is saying, no, we don't want to do that either. But in order to maintain the customs union and that common travel area and the freedom of movement of people back and forth across across the border in Northern Ireland and the Republic, it's essential that we make this as easy as possible, and therefore Northern Ireland has to stay inside the customs union. And that's the EU proposal. And the EU in Brussels, we spent 12 hours in meetings with the European Parliament, the European Council, and the Commission last Tuesday. And they said, basically, this is where we're at. This is our solution. Theresa May will accept it, or you're not going to have a withdrawal agreement. Now, no withdrawal agreement means no transition period out to the end of 2020. It means on the 29th of March next year at 11:01 p.m., they said, everything stops. And I said, well, what do you mean everything stops? They said, everything stops. We had 4 different meetings with 4 different people. They didn't know who else we were meeting. They all used those same 2 words. I said, well, what do you mean? If we have no withdrawal agreement, we get no transition, so 11 o'clock, everything stops. What does that mean? They said, your aircraft will be turned away from EU airspace because you're not qualified, you don't have safety certificates, everything gets cancelled. They said your ferries crossing the channel will be refused entry into the ports. If your shipping comes into the ports over here, you call for a pilot boat, the pilot won't come out to guide your ship into the harbour. The Eurostar train will not get platforms allocated in Calais, in Paris, in Brussels. Everything stops. I'm like, oh, what? Why? And they said, well, Article 50, paragraph. There's only 5 paragraphs in Article 50, if you haven't read it. Paragraph 3 is a real corker. It begins, all the treaties cease to apply to the member state that's leaving. All of them. And that's a fact. And you've got 2 years to do that. The problem is, we're now 18 months in. Theresa May has until the 18th of October, 4 weeks left, in order to finalize those first 3 pieces of the withdrawal agreement, the legal separation. That's citizens' rights, financial settlement, and permanent solution to make sure there's never a border in Ireland. And she's not even talking about it. She's talking about future trade arrangements and future trade deals. She's talking about, okay, well, we want a Canada plus, or we want a Norway-style deal, but we don't want to be in the EEA, and we don't want to be ruled by the ECJ. None of that is important for a withdrawal agreement. That's the second part of the WA. That's just a political declaration about a framework that we will negotiate after we've left, exactly as Stuart was saying. We cannot negotiate it today. She's got the cart before the horse, and she's not focused on the Irish situation. She's rejected the EU's proposal that says, let's have Northern Ireland treated slightly differently to the rest of the UK, because it's part of it. It's got a unique situation in the world. I don't know anywhere else in the world that has the kind of history that the island of Ireland has. So the EU proposal is put a few checkpoints in the east and west, in between the island of Ireland and the United Kingdom. That way, you can solve all the problems. Theresa May said, categorically, never going to happen. No prime minister would ever do that, because it would break up the United Kingdom. What a load of rubbish! Honestly, Northern Ireland's got its own parliament. I nearly said it's got its own government, but it hasn't at the moment. They're working on it. They have their own laws, and their laws are different to the rest of the United Kingdom. Look at LGBT rights, look at gay marriage, look at abortion rights. They've got their own specific thing going on over there in Northern Ireland. Having a few checkpoints for customs between Northern Ireland and the UK is not going to be a big issue, I assure you. But Theresa May's just rejected it anyway. And you think, she's backed herself into such a corner where she cannot solve a withdrawal agreement. She cannot go on. And you think, well, okay, well, what do we do now? If on October the 18th she comes back from Brussels and she's got no withdrawal agreement signed and no way of signing one, we're out on the 29th of March next year, and everything stops. It's pretty serious stuff going on right now. So what do we need to do? How can we fix this? We need to lobby our members of parliament. The only people that can stop this are our members of parliament by giving us what was people's vote, which we were talking about earlier. If we are able to vote, because nobody voted for a hard Brexit where everything stops. Nobody, not even the hardest of hard leavers, because as soon as they find out what it means, they won't want it anymore. So we have to have this people's vote on the final deal. It's not a referendum saying, should we be in the EU or should we be out of the EU? It's a case of, here's the deal. Do you want this, or do you want to stay in the EU? Because now we know what this is. It's not £350 million on the side of a big red bus. It's not the pack of lies that we were sold beforehand. Now we know what it is, and we will know by October the 18th, because that's the cut-off date. 4 weeks away, folks. You need to write to your MPs daily, at least weekly. Everybody, tell your friends, tell your family, saying, we demand a vote on the final deal, because nobody knew what they were voting for, not even me. I knew Brexit was pretty bad, because it's going to be a bad idea, but I didn't know all the details that we found out of in the last 18 months to 2 years. I don't think any of us really knew the level of detail and the level of damage to households across the United Kingdom. Now we do know, we must have a choice to vote on that. And the way you do it is by lobbying your MP. Send him one email. I demand a vote on the final deal. Now we know what it is. Just one sentence, but fill their inboxes, fill their post bags, and make sure that you tell everybody else to too, because they're the people who will be in Parliament, in the House of Commons, with that supposedly meaningful vote about what do we do now we've got nothing. So I guess that's where we were, how we got here, and what do we do now? Thank you very much for listening, folks.